Hello and welcome. Today we are diving deep into the world of torts. Now, that might sound like some stuffy, complicated legal term, but trust me, it's a concept that's woven into our daily lives, often in ways you don't even realize.
I mean, think about it for a second. That little fender bender you had last year, that wet floor sign you saw at the grocery store that made you walk a little more carefully, these everyday situations, well, they're all swimming in the waters of tort law. It's really the invisible system that helps us sort out all these harms peacefully. You know, the word tort itself actually gives us a fantastic clue about its meaning. It comes from the Latin word tortus, which means twisted. And that's such a perfect metaphor, isn't it? A tort is basically a wrongful act that twists away from the straight path of what's right and fair, and in doing so causes harm to someone else.
Okay, so to really untangle all this, here's our game plan. First, we'll nail down what a tort actually is. Then, we'll look at how it's different from a crime. We'll explore the three main mental states behind torts, see how the system provides relief, and wrap up with why all of this is so incredibly important for society.
All right, let's get right into it. The big question, what exactly is a tort?
At its very core, a tort is a civil wrong, and that's a key word, civil, not criminal. It's a wrong that causes someone else to suffer a loss or harm, which then results in legal liability for the person who did the act. It's really just the legal system's way of resolving private disputes between people.
Now, what's really interesting is that tort law isn't some big rule book that was written down all at once. Nope. It's what we call common law, meaning it has literally been built up over centuries, one case at a time, through the decisions of judges. So while written laws and statutes definitely play a role, its real DNA comes from these court rulings that are constantly evolving with our world.
So this is probably one of the biggest points of confusion out there. What's the difference between a tort and a crime? I mean, can a single act be both? Oh, absolutely. But the way the legal system handles each one, they are worlds apart.
Let's break this down. In a criminal case, it's the government, the state, versus a defendant. And the whole goal is punishment, right? Jail time, fines. To get a conviction, a prosecutor has to prove guilt beyond a reasonable doubt, which is a super high bar. But with tort law, it's just one person, the plaintiff, suing another person, the defendant. The goal isn't punishment, it's about making the victim whole again. And the burden of proof is way lower, a preponderance of the evidence. That just means it's more likely than not that the defendant caused the harm. That's why in a tort case, a defendant is found liable, not guilty. Big difference.
Okay, now that we've separated torts from crimes, let's get into the different flavors of torts. They're usually grouped into three main categories, and it all comes down to the defendant's state of mind when the wrong happened.
First up, you've got intentional torts. This is pretty straightforward. Someone meant to do the act that caused the harm. Second, and this is the big one, is negligence. This is all about carelessness. Someone just wasn't being careful enough and it led to an injury. And third, we have strict liability. This is a special category where someone can be held responsible even if they didn't intend any harm and weren't even careless. It usually applies to abnormally dangerous activities, like using dynamite or keeping a wild animal. And I really want to hammer this point home. Negligence is the absolute engine of the tort system. The vast majority of cases, from that fender bender we talked about all the way to really complex medical malpractice suits, they all fall under this umbrella of negligence. It all boils down to one question. Did someone fail to act with reasonable care?
So, if the main goal isn't to punish, then what is it? Well, the whole purpose of a tort lawsuit is to provide relief, or what the law calls a remedy, to the person who was injured. It's all about trying to repair the harm that was done.
This quote really just says it all. The central idea is to make the victim whole again. Now, obviously, the law can't rewind time and undo what happened, but what it can do is provide remedies, usually money, to try to compensate for the losses the person suffered.
So how does the court do that? Well, it's got a whole toolkit of remedies. The most common one is compensatory damages. That's money to cover actual losses, like medical bills or fixing a car. Now, for really terrible behavior, a court might tack on punitive damages. These aren't about paying the victim back, they're about punishing the wrongdoer and sending a message. Then you have things like equitable relief, where a court orders someone to stop doing something. That's called an injunction. And if a right was violated, but there wasn't any real harm, a court might award nominal damages, maybe just $1, just to make a point. And finally, there's restitution, which is basically just giving back stolen property. The key is that the remedy is always tailored to the specific harm.
Okay, so we've covered the what and the how, but let's zoom out for a second and talk about the big picture.
Why is all this tort law stuff so essential for society to work?
Well, it really serves 5 huge purposes. 1, it gives us a peaceful way to sort out our problems instead of, taking matters into our own hands. 2, it discourages people and companies from acting in dangerous ways. 3, it encourages all of us to be more socially responsible. 4, it helps restore injured people by getting them compensation. And finally, number 5, it defends our fundamental right as individuals to seek justice when we've been wronged.
And that leaves us with one final thought to chew on. This question really gets to the very heart of the debate in tort law. What's more important, making sure an injured person gets compensated no matter what, or carefully figuring out who was at fault before any money changes hands? It's this tension between strict liability and fault-based systems, and it's something the law grapples with every single day. Thanks for joining me.